Welcome back. So today I'm going to do a double upload where not only I'm going to do the news of the week, but I'm also going to be doing the emotion index. And since there is no midweek games that's happening on Wednesday, this is the rare time that I've been able to do a news of the week episode as the day that I usually do in the middle of the week. That is Wednesday. But despite that, there isn't really a lot of news that has happened in these last couple of days because since we have so many games that are kind of compacted, usually there's not a lot of interesting news that came out of the MLS world. But since the European transfer window, some of the leagues have slammed shut just this past week, and some of them might slam shut. Well, not might, but will slam shut soon. There were definitely some outgoing and incoming transfer from Europe or players that is going to be bound for Europe. But first, before we talk about that, we're going to talk about news that I think a lot of you have already heard about, and that of course is the Seattle Sounders officially hire Freddy Horace as an assistant head coach. And the reason why I say you guys have probably heard about this before is I kind of mentioned this with Freddy Horace decided to leave RSL and decided to be an assistant head coach for the Seattle Sounders. It's not very often that you see a head coach in MLS decide to depart their team and decide to take an assistant head coach role. It's usually the other way around, where assistant head coach tends to make a step up and maybe take over an MLS team as a head coach. But I think Freddy Horace, he kind of saw the opportunity to be on a winning team, and it's not to say that RSL is not a winning team, but if you get a chance to join the Seattle Sounders, which is a team that is definitely competing for MLS Cup this season, and if Freddy Horace really wants to win a trophy as a coach, you know that he's going to choose the Sounders rather than RSL. That might make it the playoffs this season, but they're probably not going to go as deep as what the Seattle Sounders is going to do. And not to mention the fact that the Sounders with both of their assistant head coach, both Jimmy Chayore and Gonzalo Pineda departing from their team, they were desperate in terms of trying to hire someone that take over that rim, and I think Freddy Horace is a good guy to take over that rim alongside with Brian Schmetzer and that coaching staff for the Seattle Sounders. Now, Charlotte FC have signed another player. They have signed Uruguayan defender Guzman Carajo. I think that's how you say his name. And he used to play for I forgot what was the club name, but it was a club in the Uruguayan Premier League. And yeah, this is kind of one of those signings that you see a lot of these teams have made, usually going down to South America, hope to find some hidden gems. Although I don't know if he's gonna be one of those players that I haven't actually checked how old it is, but I'm assuming he's gonna be one of those young promising players to pretty much they sign him there to anchor the back line. But yeah, Charlotte, I think they are definitely started to try to get their squad almost in shape. I mean, they still have a couple of months before they head to their first off season as an MLS team and start to really see what exactly is going to be the team that they're going to field for the inaugural season. But as of now, they have definitely signed a couple of notable players that could potentially be in that starting 11 or maybe in the squad heading into their inaugural year. Now, LAFC have loaned Diego Rossi to Fenerbahce, and this was probably the biggest news that came out of this week. And in fact, it is official that LAFC have loaned Diego Rossi to Fenerbahce. Yesterday, they talked about there was a rumor that there was an agreement between LAFC and Fenerbahce to loan Diego Rossi to there, and pending in terms of medical, this deal of course is complete. Well, today it seems like that medical is complete, which means that this agreement has made. Now, I'm not sure exactly when I read the article whether or not if there is an option to buy, but if it is, I think there's also a sell-on fee where if Fenerbahce decided to buy Diego Rossi from LAFC and they decide to sell him to another team, LAFC will at least have some of that sell-on fee. But yeah, for these past couple of years, we've been wondering when exactly Diego Rossi is going to move on from LAFC and when he's going to make the jump to Europe. The answer is right now. Now, am I surprised the fact that it is right now? No, I think, eventually it was going to happen. But at the same time, I'm kind of a little bit surprised in terms of the timing, and especially the fact that LAFC, they really need some of their best player to maybe not only just be an MLS Cup contender, but actually even making the playoffs, because this season LAFC is one of those teams that have really underachieved this season, and you would think that they would hold on to Diego Rossi until the end of the season, where, you know, let's say if they don't make it to the playoffs, maybe they of course would decide to sell him, but I guess they decided to do it now, and also knowing the fact that they've seen what Brian Rodriguez have done ever since he returned to loan in Spain, they hope that Rodriguez is going to be the guy that will be in place in terms of that spot that Diego Rossi used to play. But man, I am gonna really miss that Rossi and Vela kind of combination. But we knew that it was going to eventually happen, that there is going to be that day that Diego Rossi was going to move on to Europe, and, you know, I wish him the best in terms of see how he's going to do with Fenerbahce, and, you know, if he does do well, then I'm pretty sure LAFC is going to demand a lot of money in order for Fenerbahce to pay to them, because one thing we know about LAFC is they do not sell their big name player, and especially their young big name player, for just a small amount of money. Now, FC Cincinnati have signed former youth international Kyle Scott. Now, this is a very interesting one, because in the beginning of the season, I think I mentioned in one of the News of the Week episode of how he was actually on trial with FC Cincinnati, and obviously they decided not to sign him, and then fast forward a couple of months later, they've signed him anyway. So this is kind of weird to see that, you know, they rejected somebody that is on trial, and then a couple of months later they signed him either way. But that being said, I guess they're pretty desperate in terms of maybe signing a couple of decent players to help their depth chart a little bit. And Kyle Scott is a guy that, you know, I know him from the Chelsea academy. Unfortunately, never broke into the first team, and eventually was shipped off to Newcastle, although I don't think he also got a lot of minutes there too. So yeah, we'll see whether or not, if him coming to Cincinnati, will he of course get some time. He's still young, relatively young, but, you know, for Cincinnati, with how the season has gone for them, and especially now it's pretty much clear that they're pretty close to that territory where they're pretty much done for the season, and they're gonna just in CU next season mode. Maybe he'll get some game time. When you see teams that are kind of like in CU next season mode, they'll just play their kids and see how things, of course, will turn out. Now, NYCFC have loaned Alexandru Mitrita to PAOK in the Greek Super League, and, you know, for those of you that don't know who Alexandru Mitrita is, he is a player that was actually a star player for NYCFC. But remember last time I talked about how they decided to loan him away. I think it was to Saudi Arabia. It was mainly because Mitrita was kind of a little bit homesick, and he wants to move back to Europe to be closer to his family. And I guess this is just another example of Mitrita probably still a little bit homesick. He wants to move to another club that is in Europe, and in this case Greece is definitely very close in terms of Romania, and, you know, that is kind of the reason why they decided to do so. But, you know, it's also going to be interesting to see whether or not, if NYCFC eventually is going to bring back Mitrita. I mean, technically they still have his rights right now, and, you know, for a guy that, you know, I mentioned during his time with NYCFC, I thought he was maybe be that replacement for Maxi Morales in that number 10 spot, and, you know, he could still be if he does come back from his loan, and let's say if Maxi decided to move on whether it's next year or maybe the year after, he could be the heir in terms of that spot in the number 10 position. Now, Cole Bassett have rejected a move to Benfica in order for him to finish the MLS season. Now, you know, originally you would think that, you know, this might be kind of not a smart move for Cole Bassett to reject a move to one of the most well-known club in terms of developing young talent, that is Benfica. But then when you realize that, yeah, if he does move to Benfica, how much would you bet that he's not going to be starting in that team, or even maybe be playing in that team, and maybe play in like the reserve team for Benfica? And, you know, playing the reserve team for Benfica is not that bad, but, you know, I think for Cole Bassett, he knows that, you know, he's currently on a team that is doing very well this season. I mean, if the Rapids are not doing well this season, maybe I think Bassett would think about decide to make the jump to Europe and go to Benfica. But knowing the fact that he is currently belong in a very good club, it was. I feel like it's a smart decision for him to just stay with the Rapids and see how, of course, will go. Although I will say this is that his value, if he does not improve this season, and this year it's been kind of a disappointing year for Cole Bassett, and especially of how I always talk about how he's been one of the most snake bit player this season. If he does not improve, then maybe his value is going to start to go on a little bit of a downgrade. But that being said, as I mentioned, I understand why he decided to stay with the Rapids, because why would you want to leave for a team in Europe when you're currently on a team that definitely is starting to look like a team that could maybe even have MLS Cup aspiration? I mean, the Rapids are right there in terms of the Western Conference, and technically, when you look at the points per game total, I think the Rapids currently leads the West, and that, yes, they still trail both SKC and Seattle in terms of the standings, but they also have games in hand over Seattle and SKC. If they can win those games in hand, they will be at the top of the Western Conference. And who would have thought that the Colorado Rapids would, at one point this season, especially this deep into the season, could be at the top of the Western Conference? I mean, I knew coming into the season the Rapids were good, but I didn't think they were this good with the way that they are really trying to challenge and become one of those teams that could be a top contender in the Western Conference. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and I hate to have to break this news to Timbers fan, but it happened again. It's basically deja vu all over again, where unfortunately another Timbers player got claimed victim of that infamous turf at Lumens Field and got his season done because of torn ACL. I mean, we saw it last season with Sebastian Blanco playing against the Sounders in the Cascadia Derby, and he immediately torn his ACL just 9 minutes into the game. And while Eyrk Williamson didn't really quite take that quick to torn his ACL, he still torn his ACL during that game. And unfortunately, the worst has come true for this Timber side, and this is definitely a massive blow for them. And I honestly feel bad, not only for the Timbers, but also for Eyrk Williamson, who, he is definitely a guy that is right there to potentially be competing for those U.S. men's national team World Cup qualifying roster. And I think he still could potentially be in that discussion, but this is definitely a major setback. And yeah, I mean, it was very unfortunate to see that happen. I mean, in some way, I kind of didn't want to break it to Timbers fan, because, when I kind of first saw how he kind of went down with non-contact, and anytime when you went down with non-contact and you have to be stretcher off, that usually means it's a torn ACL, and unfortunately the worst has come. And like I said, Lumensfield have claimed another victim and then claimed another Timbers player in terms of that infamous turf. And if you thought the Timbers hate the Sounders before, they probably hate them even more, because now that's two players that is well known in their roster are unfortunately going to be gone for this season because of that infamous turf. But I guess maybe the good news, I would say, for the Timbers is that at least last year, even when they lost Sebastian Blanco, they still were able to be a decent team to make it to the playoffs. And this season, they are a team that is kind of right there in the bubble, and obviously this loss is going to be really huge and maybe can impact in terms of their playoff chances. But we shall see. We'll see whether or not if they can continue to maybe push on, and even though they lose one of their most important player in that team, we'll see whether or not if they can still make it to the playoffs. And then finally, in terms of the last news on this short news of the week episode, is that the New York Derby has officially rescheduled to September 22nd. So obviously, the New York Derby, as we know, unfortunately got postponed to another date because of unplayable condition, and they have decided to reschedule it to September 22nd, which I believe that's actually a midweek game, which is not a big surprise. I had a feeling that most likely when they do reschedule another game, it's going to reschedule to a middle of the week. Now, I will also say this, for the Red Bulls, it's also going to be interesting to see when are they going to play Inter Miami in the game earlier before this one that also got postponed, because people forget that the Red Bulls actually didn't play Miami back in July when the weather was also kind of like this, and eventually they decided to pull the plug because because the rain just cannot stop, and it was just kind of sogging up the pitch. And we'll see whether or not when are they going to play them. I mean, eventually they're going to have to play Inter Miami alongside with playing against NYCFC to make up those 2 games that was postponed because of weather condition. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all of these news. And as always, if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.